Hello, dear viewers. Welcome to Moksha Media. By the by, I am Moksha Hiremat. Language is an essential act of a human being. In order to communicate his thoughts, feelings, emotions, concepts, contexts, etc., man requires a language. Language is not only a means of communication, it is beyond communication. It communicates not only his thoughts and feelings, but one's culture and civilization, social development, and its inventions, and other so many things. By expressing in a particular language, we express the culture and civilization of that language, the tradition and philosophy and divinity which is prevalent in that language. Language not only tells us something about the past, but the present and also the meaning of the futurity. That is why language does not simply a means of communication, it is all those things which makes man a real human being. Generally, language has some unique characteristics. According to linguist Charles C. Arquette, a language generally has 7 unique characters. They are duality, productivity, arbitrariness, specialization, interchangeability, displacement, and cultural transformation or cultural transmission. In these 7 characteristics, we can see the function of any language. In order to understand the literature of a particular language, these things are required. Without it, we can understand the literature of that language, but it will be incomplete. That is why, in order to understand and appreciate the literature of that particular language, we require something more. These 7 unique characteristics of language add beauty to that language and literature. What does duality means? Duality means two. That is, generally a language has 2 features. One is the sound system and another one is the semantic system. For instance, we say prasada, we say japa. When we say prasada, it is the combination of some sound symbols. By combining together those sound symbols, we pronounce it as prasada and it means a kind of sacred offering to God and God's gift to human being. That there are so many sounds in the word prasada. P, R, A, S, A, the, A. So these different sound symbols are called phonemes. When these phonemes get together, they form a word, and that word is meaningful one, and that is called a morpheme. Then only we can say this is a prasada, this is a God's gift, this is man's offering to God, and in return God gives it to man. So that prasada should not be wasted, should not be spoiled, and that prasada should be used very consciously. But in some cultures, the concept of prasada, the concept of food is very different. But in Indian culture, the prasada means a sacred food. That means a prasada should not be wasted. Waste not, want not. That is, it should not be wasted. It should not be used more and more. A person can use it according to his requirement, and that remaining thing should be given to other human beings or other creatures. Then only all of them will live together. So here the point is, this prasada has the system of sound symbols, and at the same time it has a semantic system. It gives a meaning. And this sound symbol, sound system and semantic system combined together becomes a duality. Then productivity. Language produces so many other words. One word produces other words. See, that productivity goes on and on, sometimes unconsciously. Man is a social being, and when he comes into contact with others, he is used so many words at that time in that contact. Some words may be meaningful, but others seem to be very quaint. For example, we say rotti gitti in the language of Kannada. Rotti means bread. What does gitti means here? If you find out the word in the dictionary, you can't get the meaning of that gitti in the dictionary. It has a contextual meaning. That means it emphasizes the importance of rotti, the importance of bread. So in English also we say bread grid. What is this grid? Grid doesn't have any meaning. It emphasizes only the bread, and of course there we can see the influence of Kannada language on English language. Like this, here the language goes on and on producing a different words in a particular way, in a particular situation. And sometimes language is an arbitrary one. Man uses language according to his needs, and according to his deeds it also develops. So he uses so many words. For example, telephone, phone trapping, legislative house, etc., etc. These words are very arbitrary. Man produces these words and at the same time he uses them for his convenience. We say government for ruling in English and Sarkara in Kannada, Prabhutvam in Telugu and Arasu in Tamil. And these are arbitrarily are used. And these words are understood by the persons who is born and bred in that environment. So that is why the language is arbitrary and it has its own things. And we use the Kannada word cool. Cool means food. In old Kannada, it means a food. It means a food which is essential for the growth of the body and mind. But as the time goes on and on, that cool has given a different meaning and it means a kind of meal given at the time of a person's rituals after his death. Sometimes cool indicates the meanness of the food also. What is suggested in one period is suggested another thing in another period. So like this, the language becomes arbitrary. And of course, language has its own specialization. We use some words in every language. If I say, he kicked his bucket, if you try to understand the meaning of it by the words used in that sentence, you cannot understand it. The sentence will not be meaningful. Because the words used there are different from the meaning it has given to us. Here he kicked his bucket means he is dead. It suggests the death. But if you go by the words used there, it gives an entirely a different meaning. It has its own specialization. Every language has its own specialization. In Kannada we say, Matembadu Jyotirlinga. Of course, that speech is the radiance, the illumination of Linga, which remits the light, and in the light of that man goes on and on, man leads his life of happiness. So it gives so many meanings. So this is the specialization of a language. Of course, the language has its own interchangeability. That means when we use a particular language in a particular context, the person on the other hand can understand it if he knows that context, if he knows that language. If I use a Kannada language in English environment, the English speaking people don't understand that sentence. But if there is a person who knows the language of Kannada, can understand it. That is why when we use a sentence or a word, the other person should know it. That is, the communication takes place between persons who know to each other, who know the environment, who know that system. So that is why that is very important in this thing. That here we can see the interchangeability of a language. A language gives so many words to another language, it takes so many words from other languages also. Kannada has taken so many words from Sanskrit, and Sanskrit has taken so many words from Kannada, and Kannada has taken so many words from English, and it has given many words to English also. It is mutual. So, here, by this, we can have the interchangeability of a word, of a sentence in the given context. Of course, that language has the characteristic of displacement. That means we can express the abstract things as if they were concrete. We can express concrete things as they were abstract. Here, expressing the abstractness and concreteness creates a displacement. So, by saying something about Swarga or heaven, we can make it a concrete, or we can make it an abstract one also. By saying something about hell, Naraka, we can make it abstract and concrete also. It depends upon the user. So the point is, the language has the characteristics of displacement. Of course, not only that, language has the characteristics of cultural transmission. When a child is born and bred in a particular community, that a child understands the word used in that particular community very easily. But the child which is born and bred in another community cannot understand that word very easily, and it should be explained to that child, and then only it can understand. For instance, the word Sharana is understood by a child who is born and bred in Virashaiva community, in Virashaiva religion. It understands it very easily. It does not require any explanation. A child born in Jaina community understands the word Shavaka very easily. A child born in a Vedic family understands the word Shraddha very easily. It does not require any extra things to understand that word. Here, that the community uses that word since its inception into the world, and not only that, it passes on that word to the next generation on and on. This passing from one generation to next generation creates a cultural transmission. So this cultural transmission is very important because it shows the development of that society, it shows the development of that language, it shows the growth of literature in that language, it shows the IQ of that generation, it shows the divinity of that community. Because in order to lead a life of calm and quietness and peace, man requires so many things. And those things are expressed in that language. Some languages don't have those concepts. We can see in so many languages, the Mother's Day is celebrated, but Father's Day is not. In some community, the Father's Day is celebrated, but not Mother's Day. And in some communities, Father's Day and Mother's Day are celebrated. Here we can say how it happens. That means nowadays some changes have been taken place. So many societies in the world celebrate so many days. But when we look at the origin of them, the things are entirely different because so many things have been changed. So many waters have been flown in the river of Ganga, Brahmaputra, Tungabhadra, of course Mississippi, etc., etc., Volga. So that means so many changes have been taken place in the world, and due to those changes, we have accepted some things which are not there in a community and which have been taken from other community. Here, like this cultural transmission can be seen in a language. That is why it is considered language is not only a communication, a simple communication, but it is an embodiment of culture, civilization, philosophy, divinity, and growth, inventions, perceptions, etc., etc. So it is an embodiment of mind and matter of that community. So that is why this embodiment is very important. When we try to save the existence of particular language, that means we try to save the culture at least. We try to save the civilization which is shown, which is there in that culture. Whether that is culture and civilization is relevant or not relevant, that is immaterial here. But the personality of that culture, personality of that society is expressed in that language. So in this background, if we look at the language, we see the colorful aspects of the language. So many languages have been on the stage of perishment. So many languages are only the spoken form, not the written form. And some languages have the spoken form and written form. So anyhow, but of course, the script for written form is developed in the later stage in almost all of the languages in the world. So this is what we have to keep in our mind while studying the unique characteristics of a language. So this is important when we try to study the literature of the language. In order to understand and appreciate the literature of Kannada language and literature, this much environmental providing is important. That is what I thought. So, dear viewers, I hope you like it and subscribe it. In the next episode, again, we meet with each other. Thank you.